Hello and welcome to Mythic Mind, where we pursue wisdom on the path between primary and secondary worlds. I'm Andrew Snyder, and I'm glad that you're here. Hey there, welcome. Today I'm going to bring you a conversation I recently had with a few other patrons of the Mythic Mind community, and we're going to be talking about Knights of the Old Republic. This great game from 2003, and so I mean, yeah, it's a little bit aged, but there's a reason why we're still talking about it. The reason why this game continues to really be a fan favorite. It's one of the best things to come out of Star Wars since the original trilogy, and we talk a little bit about that in this conversation. If you haven't played it, I definitely recommend that you pick it up. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be a little clunky, graphics will be a little bit outdated, but if you're someone who can play older games, if you can get through some of that dimension, then it's definitely still going to be worth your time. And also, I have something really exciting to announce. So. You may have noticed if you've been listening to the show for a little while that we're starting to branch off in all kinds of new directions, right? I mean, here we're talking about a 2003 video game. We are talking about Star Wars movies and beyond. We're talking about literature. We've got our book club going on, and there are a number of other things that are in the works behind the scenes. And so, with so many interests, like I have so many interests, and then when you broaden that out to the Mythic Mind Fellowship, right, there are so many interests at play here, so many different domains of knowledge, of expertise, and part of what Mythic Mind is um, about bringing all these things together to demonstrate that wherever you turn, that wisdom is crying out in the marketplace, and wisdom has a way of bringing together apparently discordant realities. And so I believe that there is a lot of benefit in looking at philosophy proper, right, and studying theology, in applying our minds to video games, to books, to literature, to movies, to shows, right? These are all potentially fruitful domains of engagement. But at the same time, I recognize that not everybody, not all of our listeners are going to be interested in all the different domains. And so instead of putting everything together into one podcast, especially for the public feed, we're going to be splintering this off into a few different podcasts. I mean, we'll break it off one at a time, but eventually, I would love to have a whole network of Mythic Mind podcasts devoted to, have one that's just devoted to literature, like to our book clubs, one that's just devoted to philosophy proper, one that's just devoted to video games and or shows and movies, and I don't necessarily intend to be leading all these myself. I'll probably have a part in launching them, but my desire is that as we continue to develop these new shows, these new avenues, that they really do become increasingly communal affairs through the Mythic Mind Fellowship. I mean, we have over 50 patrons in this community, and not all of them are actively engaged in producing content, but a number of them are, and to an increasing level. And so my intention is to start a number of shows and to make them community efforts and eventually to hand off the reins entirely. That way I'm not playing necessarily an active role in all these different directions at once. I mean, it'd be fun if I could, but I don't have the capacity for that, at least not until we are at significantly higher levels of patronage. And so I'm excited to announce our first Splinter show, which is going to be based around philosophy and video games. And we're simply going to call it Mythic Mind Games. And if all goes according to plan, it should already be available by the time that you're listening to this episode. So go look up Mythic Mind Games. And if it's not available, then it will be really soon. I know sometimes it takes a little bit for new shows to populate. And so depending on how the timeline syncs up here, it's either available right now as you're listening to this, especially if you're listening to this through the public feed, or it'll be available very soon. That's going to be the Mythic Mind Games podcast. And this is going to be a way to just engage in this new medium, new to us medium of getting into especially like role playing games, getting into the stories that they provide, and I think that there's a lot of benefit there. I think there's a way to connect to a lot of people. Now, I've mentioned before that I'm not somebody who, at least for the last decade or so, has played a lot of video games. I played a lot in my youth, but since getting married, since getting, into various jobs, especially having kids, it's kind of something I just let go. And I think for good reason for a time in my life. But I'm starting to remember or to recognize that there is a lot of almost literary potential in games that are written really well. And I think that they engage us on a different kind of level. And so I think that there's benefit in getting into this, and as well as just connecting to a different niche community. And so if that interests you, then go look up the Mythic Mind Games podcast, and over there you're going to find an introductory episode, and then also hopefully by the time you're listening to this one, the KOTOR II, the Knights of the Old Republic 2 conversation will already be available over there. But for now, let's go ahead and get into our KOTOR 1 conversation. Oh, but real quickly before we get started, my internet was strangely spotty during this conversation. And so at one point, there's kind of a break, and you'll probably pick that up when you're listening. And I put a little text cue in there if you're watching this on YouTube. All right, now let's go ahead and get into this. All right, welcome to Mythic Mind as we continue our Star Wars series, this time talking about Knights of the Old Republic. And in many ways, this idea is what spawned this entire series. Um, Josh and I just had some back and forth comments on somebody else's tweet that was, related to KOTOR, and we just decided, to, what if we talked about this game sometime? And then out of that, I decided, why not do a whole Star Wars series? So that's really the origin story of this whole thing that we're doing here. And I'm excited about this. This is it's kind of a fan favorite game in the Star Wars gaming community. I mean, in my reckoning, it's one of the best things to come out of the franchise since the original series. It's something that I return to every few years or so. And I think that I think we'll start as we more or less as we did last time in just talking about our own background experience with the game, because you don't have to go in super detail, but basically why are you in this conversation? That's really what I'm asking there. And so let's start with that, just kind of going around and I'll say on my end, like I said, I enjoyed the game when it came out in what was it, 2003? So it's quite a while ago, but I come back to it every few years because I just think it's so gripping in a story level. It's philosophically engaging, especially for a game that came out at a time when I think over time stories have developed a lot more in games. I mean that's cutting a lot short, but um, I think that we deal with some interesting ideas regarding identity. I think we run into some interesting ideas regarding like even like the Star Wars concept of the light and the dark side. I think that there's a lot there that often gets overlooked simply on the entertainment level. But that's kind of vague. We'll get more detail, but I want to hear from everyone else here first. We'll just go around here. Josh, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you're here?
Sure. So as far as my background with Star Wars, I don't remember the first time I saw the original trilogy because I just grew up watching them. So I have no memory of seeing any of the first three movies for the first time. My dad saw them when they came out in theater as he was, a young man, so he was always a fan. Showed them to me and my older siblings. So it's kind of really my background with Star Wars. I was a child when the prequels came out, so I saw those in theater myself, but as far as KOTOR, obviously I was also a child when these two games came out, and my brother got KOTOR 1 for the original Xbox in 2003. He's a couple years older than me, so I don't know if my parents would have gotten it for me based on my age, but being a younger sibling, as that works sometimes, I was able to play that. I was about 8 years old, I think, when it came out. And it was pretty challenging for me as an 8 year old, just like, totally new world. I never played like, Dungeons and Dragons or Neverwinter Nights or anything like that. So I didn't really understand the system. But the idea of actually freely exploring a Star Wars world and being able to choose my own pathway and dialogue options was really interesting to me. But I, like you, Andrew, I've returned to this game and especially the second one. As well throughout really my adult life. So basically every few years as well. Continue just to find them to be really just a rich literary and even philosophical experience as I play through these. I think what these games really do well is I think I always say like one of the best, if not the best parts of Star Wars is the world building in it. It's just one of the coolest worlds, certainly like for a sci-fi or a space opera, however you want to classify it. I think just the aesthetics, the technology, the way that stormtroopers and clone troopers look and the concept of a Jedi. Everything about it really has a great foundation to work with. And I think what KOTOR does so successfully is it takes what the foundation of the original trilogy built, and it tells stories within that world and expands upon it so well. But I think that's really one of the reasons I return to these games so much. But also, I just think they're really interesting to play through, and just the replay value of making different choices and really seeing how that plays out. So I'm a huge fan of these games. They're really my favorite things that have ever occurred in the Star Wars universe, personally. So that's really my background with them.
Cool. And I have some follow-up to some of that, but I want to hear from everybody first. So, David, tell us a little bit about why you're here. And by the way, it's good to see you again. You haven't, I think, been here since the Lewis course, so it's been about a year or so. So good to have you back.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about why you're here, why you're interested in this.
Yeah, glad to be here. Yeah, I missed the other Star Wars discussion, so I'll just say I was three when the original A New Hope came out in theaters, and I remember seeing that. From that first viewing, all I really remember is that the sand people scared me, but I still, I loved Star Wars as a child and saw Empire Strikes Back at the theater at least a dozen times when I was 6 and spent 3 years thinking that Darth Vader was surely not telling Luke the truth, that he couldn't really be his dad, this horrible bad guy. So, yeah, I grew up loving those, and I'm the guy who's got the original Laserdisc set of all of the original trilogy and without any of the later editions and that sort of thing. And I've always been a video gamer, so I've played a lot of Star Wars games over the years, and mostly, they were action oriented and based on those three movies or later other movies, pod racing and things like that. But KOTOR was really the first time where they could really tell some story, a unique story. I mean, they had some of the Jedi Outcast games and Dark Forces and things told a little bit of a different story about tangential characters, but I was really excited to have an RPG sort of a game in the Star Wars universe. So I'm fairly positive I pre-ordered it for my Xbox when it came out. So uh, I haven't honestly. I've not had a complete playthrough again since it originally came out. So my memory of it is not super detailed. There's high points and aspects of the gameplay, and I played it again some with my son. He hasn't completed it either, but he has been playing through it a bit recently. But yeah, and I loved the next one. I haven't played the online game, but I saw you guys talking on Twitter about how it's fantastic. So I may have to try to look at that at some point. But yeah, that's my experience.
Cool. And yeah, we will do a follow-up on the second game, which I feel like is a little bit more philosophical in nature than the first one.
Mhm.
So that'll be fun. But yeah, and again, I'll follow up in a little bit. Ian, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your experience here.
Yeah, I didn't actually play that many video games as a kid, just some PC games. I was the oldest of 8 kids, so my parents didn't really let us have a lot of things that could have higher ratings. Because if I played something, then all my little siblings would want to play something, and they didn't want to have to deal with, well, you can play this, but your siblings can't. So they just tried to keep us all at a kind of PG level. When I got to college, my roommate, my senior year, had an Xbox, and I actually played KOTOR 2 first, the week I was supposed to be studying for the GRE. And I played 34 hours that week and still did reasonably well on the test, thankfully. But I got the PC version of both KOTOR and KOTOR 2 my next semester and played through those. And as David mentioned, you had your Jedi Outcast, you had your Dark Forces, but I really think that Knights of the Old Republic and then the Old Republic allow you to live in the Star Wars galaxy much more than those games. Those games are very linear, and they have pretty small levels, and you don't have a lot of character interactions where you have any control of who you are as a character. Your character just says what is scripted. Whereas in Knights of the Republic, you generally have at least three options. You have your nice or light side option, your dark side option, and your kind of a neutral option, or maybe a unexpected or funny option. And that ability to shape your character, I think, allows you to feel immersed in a way that, even though it doesn't have like the immediacy of a first person shooter gameplay, I feel like I've lived in Star Wars more in the Knights of the Old Republic series and the Old Republic, much more than any, Battlefront or first person shooter type game.
All right. So, where I just cut off, Ian was saying how immersive KOTOR was, and that's where I lost. Did you? I don't know how far you went after that.
No, that was my
Okay.
main point. Is I feel like one of the reasons that I think KOTOR and the two sequels, I consider the Old Republic a sequel as well, why they're so beloved still. I mean, there's a ton of games from 2003 and 2004 and 5 that are not remembered at all. These games, I think, are remembered because you feel like you lived, because you interacted with characters, you formed these relationships, and you made decisions that changed the fate of the galaxy. It wasn't just I shoot a bunch of things and I win.
Yeah, I think that's right. That choice dynamic, the fact that you can change the ending, you can change the relationships you have. I mean, yeah, I guess spoilers are okay at this point, but I mean, the fact that you can, kill off half your party at the end if you decide to go that route, in pretty awful ways. I mean, how you can like, make Zalbar kill mission for you, like it can get pretty dark. Which does make me wonder, like one of the things that makes this game great, what makes the kind of BioWare model so great, is the fact that you can make all these choices to shape the story that you're living through. Is it okay to be the bad guy? Like it's something that I don't really struggle with, but I do find that more often than not, when I get the choice, I end up going the dark path. Whether it be this game or Elder Scrolls or whatever, I usually am a bad guy, and I wonder what that says about me. Um, and so, I do wonder, like, do we just totally disconnect ourselves from the game that we're playing, or like, I don't know. What do we think about that?
I I think about that some, like especially on online games. Like if you're a bad guy in an online game, you are still actually making moral choices that affect another human being. Like I remember the old Ultima Online would let you be a thief and you could literally steal things that someone had worked hard for right out of their pocket. But at the same time, I'm thinking, but it's a game and these are part of the rules of the game. But I still, when I was playing that, I would try to only steal from people who were player killers, like some kind of a Robin Hood sort of an idea. But to your point, and you said that you tend to gravitate towards playing a bad guy in these games. I have trouble doing that. I always play the good guy, and I do feel like it's harder to be the bad guy in these games a lot because a lot of times you don't know, okay, am I saying something mean or am I turning down a quest or, you know, not letting this person join my team? Like I want everyone on my team. I want to do all the quests, but I also want to be a bad guy. But, and being the good guy, it usually doesn't come with um, some of the costs that being a moral person would have in real life. In a game you may turn down a little bit of money or something from a character when you found their cat or whatever it was. But it doesn't have things that come back to bite you as much for being villain as often as they do. I mean, BioWare, they try to do that. Mass Effect has some of that where you might make a morally bad choice early on that two games later comes back to bite you. And I appreciate the attempts that they try to make it that. But yeah, it's okay to be a bad guy in a story. You can't have a story without the bad guy, right?
Plus, in a game like Star Wars, I mean, you get all the cool powers if you're bad, right? The lightning, and I mean the force persuasion. That's usually a bad thing in these games. And so it's just, I don't know, it's a lot cooler. Um, all right, so I feel exonerated. It's okay to be a bad guy in games. Um, well, I mean, Josh, what do you think is something that's maybe philosophically compelling about this game? I mean, obviously, when we talk about a game that has staying power, there's something real to it, right? Something that resonates with us. I mean, what's something that stands out to you?
Sure. So, I mean, speaking just at an extremely high level here, I mean, it's it's a game of ethical dilemmas, right? Like you have a lot of, difficult decisions to make that ultimately they have like consequences for you as a player in the game, but also just for like how the story plays out, right? And I think that was one of the unique, interesting things that drew me to this kind of game because that was a new idea for me when when this game came out. I hadn't really played anything like that up to this point. But just like the I mean the overall theme that like choices matter. I think that's really like a theme that plays throughout the game and is kind of embedded into the mechanics of the game itself, right? So you encounter Juhani in the Dantooine Grove, right? And it's like this is a playable party member that you can potentially have in your party for the rest of the game, right? Or as an option to have in your party for the rest of the game. And um, you can not show mercy to her and literally kill her, and she's never available again the rest of the game. Like she just dies there. This is let's see, Dantooine's what the second like I guess it depends on the or no, it's the second point in the game because you have to go there after Terrace. So it's like this is like pretty early in the game, and you just killed somebody who has the potentiality to be in your party for the rest of the game, right? So it's like it shows you that like the consequences of your actions really matter there, and there's something even within each of these interactions that's philosophical, right? Like is it justifiable to kill Juhani, right? Like is it the classic like Mace Windu line with like Emperor Palpatine in episode 3, like it's like he's too dangerous to be left alive. Like, is she too dangerous to be left alive? Or same with like Bastila when she, flips to the dark side after being tormented and enticed by Malik when she gets captured. Is she too dangerous to be left alive? And that's an even bigger question with Bastila because just the sheer potential and mastery she has, just she's the prodigy, right? Like she's naturally gifted, she's um unbelievably talented with a lightsaber, with a force. It's like that's her being on the opposite side of you is scary, right? So do you kill her off? Like is that the better choice for not just you and your party, but for the galaxy, for everybody, right? Like those are the kind of dilemmas that you're actually faced with and thinking through in this. And then I think like I don't, and maybe we can just like wait to get into this one because it's obviously like a kind of a big talking point for KOTOR 1. But even thinking about like what the message actually is with Revan, and obviously that's like the big spoiler in the game, right? Is that like that's you, the character you're playing, your memory, you got knocked out, your memory was basically your memory of all these things is gone, like it's disappeared, it vanished, and now you're playing through the game. And what does that actually say about Revan? The fact that you were, this wicked uh, Sith Lord, and you lost your memory, and now you could potentially, maybe it's through the influence of the party members that you interact with, or maybe it's other circumstances and factors that we could consider as well. But what actually causes Revan to um, be on the light side this time? Like, why doesn't Revan um, end up the same way again? Or if you pick the dark side path, it's like Revan does just end up being the Sith Lord again because you kill Malik, and if you spare Bastila, she's basically just like you're number one and she's number two, right? Like the Sith way. And so it's like, what are all these things saying um about Revan? It's like in the different pathways you choose. Like I think there's more to be explored with that than maybe anything else in this game personally. But I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, there's definitely that tension between pragmatism and I don't know, virtue for the sake of virtue or something of that nature. Of pity versus justice. Like those things definitely come into play here. When you're talking about like, what do you do with Juhani? Now, unless I'm playing a light side character, I usually kill her because I don't find her very compelling. But that aside, that there's that ongoing question, or even like what the Jedi did to Revan. Is that moral? In that they didn't just execute justice on him, they reprogrammed him. Like and even if he decides to choose the light side, is he actually choosing the light side, or is he just a pawn of the Jedi? And at that level, like where does morality even fall here? I think at best, the decision to wipe his memory, reprogram him is questionable. It In many ways, it could be argued that they're just as pragmatic as Revan was when he runs off to the Mandalorian Wars and essentially becomes Darth Revan. That he chose to take the pragmatic approach of I need to secure this end, even as the Jedi did. And so then the question could be asked: are they even any different?
And that's why I think it's so important that they include the character of Jolie. And I'd love to have an extended discussion about Jolie, what he believes, whether you agree with him as a person and as a player, and uh, what does that mean for the meaning of the game? I mean, I think that there actually is a meaning of the game. I think that even though BioWare tries to make it fun for both good and evil playthroughs, I think that the light side playthrough is supposed to be the light side is supposed to be the choice that is right. It's not a world where good and evil are equal. But I guess that's kind of, I guess I'm kind of jumping ahead of the discussion because I think Jolie asks us to step back and say, well, what is good? What is evil? Can you be gray? I mean, that's kind of a really hot question: is can you be gray?
Yeah, I agree that he's definitely an interesting character. To me, he's very much a Qui-Gon kind of figure, right? In that he's obviously a good guy. I mean, in the choice between the light and the dark, he's obviously on the light side, even though he's not in line totally with the Jedi, even as Qui-Gon was. And I think that these characters help us to recognize that the Jedi are not equivalent to the light side, that the Jedi are an order that are trying to devote themselves to the light side, or at least that's their ideal. But I mean, they're a human, fallible order. And I think there's plenty of room for even critiquing the Jedi code itself, recognizing that it is only good in as much as it reflects the good, which is not the same thing as the order itself. And so, a lot of times, I think in the way we kind of oversimplify Star Wars, we just have, the Jedi and the Sith are stand-ins for the light and the dark. And that's not exactly right. I don't think that's what Star Wars is meant to provide us with. And so I think that the Qui-Gon character, I think the Jolie Bindo character, I think that they serve to demonstrate that we're dealing with good and evil, not simply yin and yang. That this is not purely Machiavellian. And so Manichaean is actually the word I meant to use there. Machiavellian goes back to the pragmatism conversation. Yeah, it's not entirely Manichaean. And so, yeah, I think that's largely what Jolie provides to the discourse. At least that's what I think is his highlight.
I think that's really my favorite. Replaying KOTOR, I didn't get this when I was like 8 and 9 years old, right? But I think I replayed it when I was about 18, maybe like 2021, and I didn't know what I know now because it's been about 10 years now, and then thankfully I'm maybe a little bit smarter and wiser than I was when I was 20, thankfully. But these type like the way it actually challenges that notion of black and white, good and evil, like that, challenging the notion that like there's this Manichaean dualist kind of construction to the Star Wars universe, right? Where it's like the Jedi are the good guys. They like represent all that is substantially good. The Sith are they're the baddies. They represent everything that's substantially evil, right? But that's challenged in KOTOR, and it might be challenged in other places. I'm not super well versed in like the Star Wars lore, to be honest, as much as I just am with these games specifically. But that's what I was really drawn to replaying them as an adult. And well, I'll certainly save this for the next conversation. But I mean, like nobody challenges those ideologies better than Kreia in a sense, right? And that's what I love about KOTOR 2 so much. But you do see that with Jolie in a sense here, taking like a good but like neutral yet also good. Like he's somewhere on that spectrum, right, between like neutral and good. But he's got a different perspective than the Jedi Order on what it perhaps what it means to be good. And I think that's what's so he really opens up so many so many ideas and ways to think about the philosophy of Star Wars, and that's, I think, the best part of these games for me personally.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really appreciate that you highlight that even though Julie, you can look at him from like a gameplay perspective. He's got the stats of a gray Jedi and he's listed as gray. But if you listen to what he says, if you think about him as a character, he chooses kindness. He chooses to do the right thing. He's never interested in being like an ambiguous figure. He's not like sometimes it's okay to torture people and sometimes it's okay to be nice to people. That's never. He says the Jedi have the right goal, but the institution has rotted. The institution has corruption and self-interest and institutional power at stake. So they want to keep their control, so they refuse to let you marry. They refuse to let you have your own splinter Jedi orders. And you can really look at that as kind of like a Catholic versus Reformation perspective on Christianity. Like Jolie and Qui-Gon, as you point out, are very much the Martin Luther figure, pointing out, no, you don't have to have celibate clergy. No, you don't have to have these things. You can marry and still be committed to the good, which, of course, in our understanding is God. And I think you can see the light side of the Force as also a divine, a good in that sense, and definitely not in a yin and yang perspective. And so I think that's a really good thing to remember, because I think a lot of fanboys like to say, "Oh, well, I like to use Sith lightning, but I also don't want to like be corrupted like Emperor Palpatine. I don't want to look ugly." Like it's a very superficial look at what gray means, and I think Andrew's absolutely right. It's not gray as in you can be 50% good and 50% evil. It's that you're rebelling against certain dogmatism of the Jedi Order and seeing the light as being not identical with the Order. So I think that's a really good way of looking at Jolie.
Yeah, and I think that what you said, it does a good job of dispelling the myth of neutrality. That nothing really is neutral. And as Augustine says, you are what you love, which is also a very Platonic idea, obviously. That it's not even so much where it is that you're situated. It's what are you facing? Like, what are you moving toward? That's fundamentally what defines you. And obviously, in a Jolie character, we see him moving toward the good. And I feel like in all these Star Wars conversations, I want to keep emphasizing that, especially in the original series, and I think even beyond to some degree, although it gets a little bit more gray, that they don't talk about in the first series, they don't talk about the light side of the Force, or at least they don't make it a substantial dualism between the light side and the dark side. You just have the Force, and then you have the dark side. It's the reality and the shadow, not two equally contrasting realities. And even though I think the language surrounding that gets increasingly blurry as you go through developments in Star Wars, to the point where eventually it kind of sounds a little bit yin and yang at times in the way that they talk about it. Um, that's not where things began. And I feel like even in something like KOTOR, where you have light side and dark side, that even still, I think that it's framed essentially as the reality and the shadow, what should be versus a inversion of what should be, of what's real. And so, yeah, I think that the movement away from identifying the light side strictly with the Jedi and making the Jedi under judgment of the light, I think that that does a good job of demonstrating the fact that I think it's actually easier to understand Star Wars from a Christian perspective than from a strictly, I don't know, Zen Buddhist perspective, even though like that's there and obviously an influence in Lucas himself and sort of starting things. I feel like that is less of a pillar of Star Wars than the more sort of Augustinian Platonic idea of the good. Um, and I think that KOTOR demonstrates that if you're attentive to it. Not that I don't know if they have great philosophers who are writing these games. I don't know, but at least implicitly, I think that's what is the best way to frame the structure of the world. So, I mean, what do we think of what happens with Revan? I mean, would you consider this redemption or oppression on behalf of, with the Jedi do to him, assuming he, is go light side of the story?
Well, there's a lot of ways you can choose to do it. I mean, I've thought about this, but I'm kind of an irreparable goody two shoes. I always do light side because it makes me feel bad to do dark side. But I've thought if I were like a more intense role player, I could really see Revan going on an arc when he discovers the betrayal of the Jedi. He goes dark side, like he just fully loses any respect he has for these people. Alternatively, if you develop a relationship with Jolie and with Bastila, and you like buck the Jedi orthodoxy, I think that is a true redemption because it is him making choices. If you're just kind of mindlessly going, this is what I get for light side points, and I want the points, of course, that's not a redemption. But if you're forming the relationships and having a commitment to doing the right thing, I think that would be a relationship. And that's why it's a more immersive game than just good or bad points.
Now, I don't recall, is he really programmed or is he just tabula rasa? Because I know in video games, they do lots of things to try and bring you into the story. They'll make, like Gordon Freeman doesn't talk, so you'll feel like Gordon Freeman in the Half-Life games and things like that. But real common one is the character wakes up, or the really common trope is the character has amnesia, and they do both of those in this one. So if they just made you a blank slate and you don't have the past experiences or whatever led him to become the Revan that you're hearing stories about as you play the game, then I feel like it's just a story about what is it that makes us who we are? How do we become who we become? But yeah, if the Jedi literally programmed him in some way, then that would be problematic. But I don't remember exactly how it was. You guys could speak to that.
So even if they don't necessarily program him, they very least deprogrammed him in that, they wipe his memory of being Darth Revan. So that way, maybe he does start with a tabula rasa. Let's just start from the beginning. But that still raises the question. I mean, is this what we should try to do, like chemically or however, with gross criminals or villains and that we or POWs and from the other side? Like, do we take the Guantanamo Bay inmates and just start wiping their memories to give them a fresh start? Like, I think that there's still some moral questions to be raised on that level.
For sure.
And I mean, I don't really know because I mean, I feel like in the real world, I would be able to come out pretty clearly and say, no, that's not a good thing. But at the same
Well,
time, I mean, on a pragmatic level, I mean, I don't know.
I think so much of this is my feelings about this are so tied to KOTOR 2 because KOTOR 2 is a direct sequel. It's very much about the fallout of the choices that the Jedi Order made in KOTOR 1. And I don't want to come out and say kill all the Jedi because that's not what I'm intending to say. But I do feel like the Jedi are revealed in KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2 because a lot of the council members kind of have a crossover. They're revealed as selfish and cold, and I would say the game intends us to be critical of them. I don't think that the KOTOR games are particularly pro uh, Jedi leadership, at least.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, that we are, I think we are called to question the institution, and like you said, I think that does pick up even more so in KOTOR 2, looking back. Um, I kind of like the way that you framed the way that you framed the way the story could have gone, where, after the revelation, you have Revan sort of maintain the light side, but move in a different direction, right? You can move against the institution, so to speak, that led to this point, while still maintaining fidelity to the light, and maybe even reforming it, or some splinter Jedi order or something. I think that would actually make for a really compelling story. So I would be okay with them making some tweaks when they finally get around to the movie out of this. Um, well, let's see. Well, I mean, what else? Do you guys have anything else that you feel like bringing up here?
Does anyone have any comments on like favorite characters, favorite interactions, or even favorite weapons, or like what makes the game play itself fun for you?
I mean, I think one of my favorite exchanges is when, Basila's questioning you about some stuff, and I think it's if she's questioning you if you're starting to go dark side, and you can say that you're secretly Hutt in disguise trying to take over the galaxy. That's one of my favorite options. But um, I think my favorite character, I gotta go HK-47. He's just so iconic, so entertaining. I mean, he's so unique. I mean, he's one of the first, at least that I know of, like Star Wars droids with like real personality. So yeah, I mean, that's got to be my number one. Um, Josh, what do you have to say?
Say nice choice, meatbag. Um, that's a tough one. I mean, I love Canderous, but I love him more and even more in like KOTOR 2. So I guess that's tied in. And I keep wanting to talk about KOTOR 2, so I'm gonna apologize in advance for that. But I mean, I have kind of like I had thought about this not too long ago, where I wanna. I don't know if anyone's ever done this where they like put a game or they've read a book or something, and like I'm just gonna like trace this theme specifically as I like go through this or this idea, maybe not even necessarily a theme. And kind of talking about like Joe Lee makes me, want to re-explore that a little more. And I'm almost thinking like, is he almost like, could Joe Lee like almost in some way be influenced by like the 19th century like transcendentalist movement in some way, just like this idea of like individualism and self-reliance, like this sort of this love of nature. Like I'm drawing blanks here, so I'm not going to do an incredible idea of like explaining or exploring this because I haven't done it yet. But I mean, he's basically like right. He's like reserved himself to living, um, living in a place that's full of nature, but he's really in like the shadow area of that. I can't remember what it's called, like the Shadowlands or whatever, like the bottom floor of Kashyyyk. But like it's almost like there's possibly this transcendentalist approach that Jolie might have to the way of the Jedi, right? And I'm like, maybe I'm totally off base in saying that, but I'm kind of thinking about that now as different ideas are popping in my mind, and I had to explore it to really like actually like put out a thesis and like actually consistently and coherently defend that. But there's something there, right? Like where it's like he's individualistic, like he's on his own, he's relying on himself, like he's often, you know, he's off in nature in a sense. I don't know. I'm thinking of like maybe there's like there's a paper or something or a video topic here, right? Like it's like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Jolie Bindo. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe
I
just
look
thinking
forward to your fourth. Yeah, I look forward to your forthcoming Substack on this.
it's an idea, right? Like I gotta believe there's something there, but maybe that'll inspire me to replay the game just for the purpose of looking into that. But I don't know. Jolie's interesting. Like I've often thought like what if like we could just like get like you know a lengthy conversation where we could just like lock Jolie Bindo and Kreia in a room together and just hear them talk about like the Jedi and the Sith. Like that's all I want in the world, right? I just want that, and maybe we can like create like a fictional like Socratic dialogue between Jolie and Kreia. If anybody that's smarter than me wants to do that, please do it. That'd be excellent.
Well, I mean, I know David has some experience with AI creations, right?
No, don't saddle me with that. Just a little playing around, yeah. Uh, well, I would say, yeah, I also love that character, HK-47. Doesn't he preface what he's saying with like an explanation of the kind of statement that he's making, right? Am I remember? Okay. Yeah, and even if it's to his own detriment, he will say that. There, BioWare did that in Mass Effect as well. There's a whole alien race called the L-Core who's unable to convey emotions to others. So they start every sentence, with barely veiled sarcasm, and then they say whatever it is. So yeah, I think they wanted to continue that idea. But yeah, I also liked some of the aspects like the idea of the Star Wars universe having to invent bladed weapons that could parry a lightsaber, which of course is necessary for gameplay purposes, but it also makes sense in universe as well. Ian, you may know from reading books, if those kinds of ideas probably predated this game, but this was my first experience with that sort of a thing. And I'm just always fascinated with the attempts at morality systems in games, especially earlier attempts, because there are always times where it says, okay, that you made an evil choice. And I'm like, now wait a minute. If you just ask me to explain why I made that choice, I think I could explain why I did not think that was an evil choice. But also there's things like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can like make a deal to just enslave all the Wookiees in this game. And if you've, helped enough space old ladies across the space street, you're still a Jedi after doing that. And I think that that kind of just shows how the idea of morality being a balance of a scale just doesn't really work out. But I'm always fascinated with seeing how games attempt to convey uh, the importance of moral choices.
Yeah, I agree that morality system is sometimes really fun to game, and especially when you get to the second game when you can get your characters to influence other characters, but their morality stays the same. But in the first game, I would say one of my very favorite things is um, it really the squad mechanic. You always have your two companions. Now, some people go hard mode and just do one, but I really like having three characters. And here's a very rudimentary strategy: you'll have one character who's like very strong and very like your Wookiee. You have a Wookiee, so they go up and they're like in the faces of the other characters, and then you've got your other characters with blasters and they shoot from far away, and that way you can really get more damage done while keeping your more squishy characters safe. And so I like the way that that forces you to think in a more tactical and relational way, because a lot of the characters are their personality kind of matches their character build. So I like the relational and character aspect to that gameplay piece. And I would say my personal favorite character is Bastila because I love seeing, the perfect student thrust into the real world for the first time, and they really struggle. Like they're forced into all these emotions and things that the textbook didn't cover. And so I love how they force Bastila through that experience, and I definitely related to that myself. Plus, of course, Jennifer Hale's voice acting is superb.
Yeah, they did do some interesting things with her. I like even how she turned to the dark side. I think there's some significant stuff going on in that scene. How, he doesn't so much Malik when he captured her doesn't so much threaten her, doesn't even entice her with like all the power she can have. I mean, he does, but by inflicting it upon her, right? And so I mean, it's a pretty dark psychology, but also dealing with some reality here that those who have suffered most can, I mean, potentially use that pain to then inflict upon others as a way of grasping at power. And so I think that they're doing something pretty significant there regarding, I guess, the nature of villainy, that a lot of times those who are most likely to inflict pain on others are those who have suffered great pain themselves. And they're latching out or they're reaching out for some kind of power of their own. And that takes the form of inflicting damage on other people. And so I think that they do some really significant things with Bastila between just the naive student thrown out into the real world with great power and great potential. And then as well as dealing with her fall to the dark side, I think that they do a lot of interesting psychological things with the character of Bastila. So I would echo that in saying that she's probably one of the more substantial characters, even though I just like HK.
And I didn't remember that well, it's Jennifer Hale, right? Yeah, that she did her voice. She's probably the busiest voice actress in video games. She's also the female Commander Shepard in Mass Effect, which is another. I've mentioned him a lot. I know more about Mass Effect than I do about KOTOR. I've played it a lot, multiple times, but Andrew hasn't played it yet, so it'll be a while before we have a discussion on that.
I'm here for
Yeah,
the Mass Effect 2 discussion anytime, so let me know.
it is in my Steam library. I picked it up during a sale, but I've not made it there yet, and I don't know when I will, but I'll get there eventually. I got thrown off course with the Oblivion remaster. But anyway, well, anything else? As we've hinted at, I think that we'll have more to deal with when we get to KOTOR 2. But is there anything else any of you want to say about KOTOR 1?
Oh, one more thing is the music for KOTOR 2 is movie level. Like Jeremy Soul's themes for Darth Malak and Bastila and the Dantooine, when you get onto Dantooine and you're walking around, just the music that comes on is just glorious. It is an experience, and even though the gameplay is for sure 20, 25 years old now, it's worth playing through.
Yeah, good.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just going to echo that. That it is still, it's a great experience. Even though by today's standards, yeah, the controls are kind of clunky, like the whole system is kind of clunky by today's standards. But also, I don't know if it's just because, I was there 3,000 years ago, but I like the tactical system of, you pause it, playing all your moves from all your different characters and get everything to sync up well. Like I don't know, I enjoy that. I think it's a good experience all around. And aesthetically, as far, even like aesthetically, like, yeah, the graphics are dated, but even that can be updated if you really want to. But I don't think it needs to. I think it's easy enough to get immersed, whether or not you go that route. But what were you gonna say, David?
Oh, his mention of Dantooine. I liked having an image of what Dantooine was like, because Princess Leia mentions Dantooine as a lie about where the rebel base is in the original movie. And so having this image of this kind of a plains sort of a pastoral planet, I thought was pretty interesting. I was glad to have a little more depth added to just that throwaway place name from in earlier fiction.
I was gonna say totally shifting gears here if that's all right, but we were talking about dark side paths and different things. I can see where you might find a justification for killing Juhani or even, Bastila in a sense, even on the light side path, the Bastila option. But where I really would draw my line here is dark side players helping Zerka Corporation. They're just the worst, honestly. Like they're like the bureaucrat and Alistair McIntyre's After Virtue, or like there's probably parallels there with that hideous strength somewhere too. But they're all about the profit, like with no considerations for the ramifications morally or on the effects of others as well. And I think like on amidst Dark Lords such as Darth Malak or like Nihilus, Scion, even Kreia or Darth Treya in the second game. As a villain in doing things that are just morally evil all throughout the series, I think the Zerga Corporation can really fly under the radar a bit there because they are. There are a lot of just like the big companies that we see today, right? Where it's just like, how do you maximize the bottom line without consideration of the overall well-being of the common man and the lower class, right? It's like Zerka Corporation is they are the Star Wars version of that, at least in KOTOR. And so yeah, I can never help them, even if I was going to play a dark side playthrough for experimentation. That'd be like one of the hardest things for me to draw my line on because I just they're the worst. They're always trying to do unethical things for their own advances and profits. So just a thought.
Wow, Josh, I didn't know you were an anti-capitalist.
Maybe. What is capitalism?
Oh, that's gonna take us a
I was
little bit
about to
off
say
course.
explore different forms of capitalism here compared to Berserker Corporation and the ethics of that. I'm all for capitalism. I'm not for bureaucracy running America. I guess let's put it that way.
Okay, so now we're cleaning up the deep state. Okay, I can't pin you down. We're all over the place here. uh, we'll save that for your next Substack. All
I
right.
was going to try
Yeah.
Substack. Well, there's probably like two people that read that, so I don't know. I don't know how much that matters.
Well, I'll link it. Everyone will read it. It'll be good.
Here's a plug for my Substack, I guess. Shameless plug.
Yes, go read Josh's Substack. All right. Anything else? All right. Yeah, so next time we will get into KOTOR 2, deal with all these stuff about, nihilism and, do we want to destroy the Force or whatever. So we'll get there next time. But before we go, yeah, let's go ahead and plug anything you had to plug. And so go read Josh's Substack. I'll link that in the notes. Ian, go ahead and plug your show again.
Yeah, I have a podcast called Reader 2, Standing By, and that's about the X-Wing novels and comics that are based on the video games. We don't actually talk about the video games much because I'm much more of a reader person, but if you like Star Wars, we talk a lot about the ethics, because that's a big part of the X-Wing series, and even about the Force sometimes, because a couple of those pilots are Jedi.
Perfect. So yeah, go listen to Ian's show. And David, I know you've got a platform that puts us all to shame, so you can go ahead and say something about what you have going on.
I don't have I'm just a husband and father and enjoyer of things. And when people are talking about video games, I want to be there. So that's all I've really got going on right now.
That's very humble. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Look forward to speaking with you next time about KOTOR 2. But until then, may the Force be with you. All right. Thank you for listening, or thank you for watching. And I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. I know that I did, and I really look forward to this new avenue that we're engaging with in dealing with philosophical engagement with video games. And so again, go and check out our other show, the Mythic Mind Games podcast. I think that it's going to be it's an exciting new venture. And like I said, eventually down the road, especially if this goes well, if this receives your support, this seems to be something people are interested in, then hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll start developing the literature podcast, the philosophy podcast, and more. And if you want to be a part of this, right? You want to lead a show, you want to be part of a show, you want to just support what we're doing, then I welcome your patronage over at patreon.com/mythicmind. The more support that I receive, the more time that I can spend in just bringing us into these new directions and taking the directions we're already going and taking them further and increasing quality and quantity of output. And thank you so much to all of you who are already patrons of Mythic Mind. And by name, I would like to thank all Tier 3 patrons and higher. So many thanks to Mark, Amanda, Chase, Chaz, Christopher, Clinton, David, Don, Aaron, Evie, Jamie, Justin, Kyle, Paul, Roger, Ross, Tyler, and William. This list keeps getting longer and longer, which is fantastic because it allows us to keep doing more and more and more. And so again, I greatly appreciate your support, and I hope that more of you will consider joining us so that we can continue moving on this road. But that's it for now. Until next time, Godspeed. I have always, at least ever since I can remember, had a kind of longing for death. It was when I was happiest that I longed most. It was on happy days when we were up in the hills, the three of us, with the wind and the sunshine, where you couldn't see Gloam or the palace. Do you remember? The color and the smell, and looking across at the gray mountain in the distance. And because it was so beautiful, it set me longing, always longing. Somewhere else there must be more of it. Everything seemed to be saying, Psyche, come. But I couldn't come, and I didn't know where I was to come to. It almost hurt me. I felt like a bird in a cage when the other birds of its kind are flying home. And now I will make answer to you, O my judges, and show that he who has lived as a true philosopher has reason to be of good cheer when he is about to die, and that after death he may hope to receive the greatest good in the other world. For I deem that the true disciple of philosophy is likely to be misunderstood by other men. They do not perceive that he is ever pursuing death and dying. And if this is true, why, having had the desire of death all his life long, should he regret the arrival of that which he has always been pursuing and desiring? The longing of Plato and the control of the Stoics pervades Lewis's retelling of the Cupid and Psyche myth until we have faces. With this incredible novel, which he believed to be his best, Lewis demonstrates the tensions in ancient thought and, even more significantly, the limits of rational philosophy, which can only go as deep as the foxes can dig. Beyond that, under that, and providing the life of that thought, we find the dark and holy places that blind our faculties of reason. What then shall we do? This is a topic that we will explore after first surveying some important philosophical contributions in the ancient world that have had some significant bearing on Lewis's great novel. To this end, we will begin with Plato's Phaedo, which discusses the immortality of the soul and what those who love wisdom might expect in the life to come. And then we will spend 4 weeks with some of the great Stoics, including Epictetus, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca. Finally, we will turn our attention to Till We Have Faces for the final 2 weeks with original content, and so this will not be the same as what you may have seen in the Fiction and Philosophy of C.S. Lewis course. Each week of this 8-week study will include readings from primary sources that will be provided as PDFs, although these are all texts that belong in your personal library. You'll be provided with recommendations for secondary readings, you'll have recorded presentations for you to watch at your leisure, ongoing Discord chats, and weekly live meetings to discuss the readings. Enroll today by going to patreon.com/mythicmind and checking out the shop, or you can gain access to all courses, past, present, and future this year by purchasing a Tier 3 annual subscription. I hope to see you there.